I'm greatly honored to have a good friend of mine, Merle Van Dolsen, to today's podcast. He served on the USS San Francisco nuclear submarine for many years, and thank you for protecting us while we were going about our lives. Merle goes by the name of Van, so we'll call him Van through this interview. How you doing today, Merle?
Okay, Mike. Yeah, I was on the San Francisco and then the USS Birmingham and then USS Honolulu. So I was on three submarines.
Okay, now I have some questions from some St. Helena people here.
Okay.
Cindy from St. Helena wants to know what temperature it is inside the submarine.
Well, it's climate controlled. So, we keep it cool because of all the electronics on board. So it's kind of on the cold side in a lot of areas. Like my radio room was super, super cold. There's times when I'm wearing my submarine sweater and my foul weather jacket and knit cap and everything. So they keep it cold for a reason.
How do you guys exercise aboard a submarine?
Drink a lot of coffee. There's really the only place they have that you can exercise is down in the torpedo room, and they would put like on my submarines, a little exercise bicycle and maybe a couple of weights. But no, there's no really on the class of submarines I was on. Um, there was no exercise equipment, so a lot of people gain weight. Not me. I always lost weight underway because instead of eating, I like to sleep more because
Yeah.
sleep is hard to come by.
When you sleep, do you share your bunk? Do you have your own private bunk, or does it, after you're done sleeping, does somebody else sleep in it?
No, that's called hot racking. No,
Oh,
when you get underway, you have more crew members assigned to a submarine than there is racks on board berthing. So you leave people in. If you're carrying more people and you need to, then some of the junior enlisted people who are not qualified in submarines may have to rotate racks. So I have um, some racks in torpedo room too for riders, but on the most part, no, there's no more hot racking on submarines. Everybody has their own berth assigned to them.
and Lynn Bomarito wants to know if the food is good because her dad served on a submarine during World War II, and he's always said how good the food was. Is that true?
Well, yeah, I can't talk about it now, but when I was in the submarine service, yeah, it was good. We used to get surf and turf maybe once a week. Yeah, yeah, we had good cooks. Later in my career, started sending the cooks to culinary school, like the CIA there, and they used to be in St. Helena.
Yes.
Yeah, and but they still have a Navy menu, and they have to go by Navy menu, the ingredients, things like that. But the guy went to a culinary school. He could, spice it up and everything. But yeah, it was good food.
And Charlie wants to know how many sailors were on the sub.
Well, there's usually maybe 140 people assigned to a submarine.
Wow.
But when you go underway, you can't take that many because you don't have that many racks. So uh, usually, though, around 100, low 30s.
And Karen wants to know how deep do you guys go?
Uh, can't say.
Okay.
Deeper than 5 feet.
That's a good answer. Okay, now we got some other, what was a typical day like for you on a submarine? What time would you wake up?
Well, on a submarine, back when I was on there, you had an 18-hour day.
Oh,
So you would have 6 hours where you would be on your watch station, then you would have 12 hours off. Now that sounds like a lot of time, but off. But during that time frame off, they could be running drills, you got training, you had to work on equipment, fix equipment, do maintenance on equipment, you have paperwork, you have uh, all sorts of things going on. And so if you're lucky, you get, maybe 6 hours of sleep in an 18-hour
Busy,
period
busy doing something all the time, huh?
all the time. Yeah. When you're underway, that's why to me, anytime I got a chance to sleep, I was in my rack because you never know. I've been up for 48 hours
Wow.
times, okay, which is not good because you start losing it and you're not as sharp and you can make mistakes. So it's not a good idea. They don't like it, but sometimes that happens. You could be on watch for 6 hours, you get off watch, you go down and eat, and then all of a sudden they run training exercises and drills, firefighting, flooding drills, things like that. Then you have training, division training, boat training, um, and things come up, maybe 4 hours of sleep.
How do you deal with being confined to such space for such a long period of time? You just get used to it after a while. You just,
Yeah, I mean, it takes a certain person. You
yeah,
have to be a little on the crazy side.
yes.
You know, some Mariners will make model prisoners because you're just being locked up. Okay, except you don't get to see the sun on a submarine. But yeah, you cope. I mean, when you go through your whole submarine pipeline and get to a submarine, and all that, you're evaluated all the time. If you get on board, you're being looked at all the time. You're trying to earn your dolphins, your submarine dolphins. This is a warfare pin.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's like pilots wear uh,
Wings.
wings, and SEALs have that trident warfare pin. So you have to earn them. They're not given to you by just
No.
being on board. You have to go through a long qualification process, learning everything on board, all the systems, how they operate, every valve, what the valve does. I mean, it's just extensive. They
Do
give you a year.
they have
So
schematics on
when
board?
you're going through that process, you're being also looked at by the crew and the command and seeing if you can cope. If you can't cope,
Wow.
you're out.
Really?
Yep,
It's like,
you're off.
what's it like going without sunlight for so long? When you guys surface, does it make a difference? Like, I mean, do you have to
Well, yeah,
adjust?
you know, as I got more senior, I moved out of radio and started working in the control room. And I would get on the scope, and I could see sunlight, or at
Wow.
night, dark in the moon, and that. So we call that the periscope liberty, where you get
Oh,
to get them. So other people could get a chance if you're not doing anything particular and it's downtime and that. And plus, they also have monitors, and the crew can sit there and watch the monitor and see out the scope and that.
what have
But
you ever
it's when
experienced?
you pull in a port and you open that hatch and you see that sunlight streaming in, it's beautiful. I mean, it's just like, wow.
So, have you ever experienced anything unexpected or surreal while you were submerged? Like
Yes.
anything all the time, huh?
Uh, well, no, I mean, most of the time it's just routine. If everything's going well, it's just routine. You stand your watch, you do your training, you fix your equipment if it needs it, you do maintenance, you pay for work, get your sleep, you eat, and it just over and over and over. You go through that routine. Sometimes things happen to make it kind of exciting.
I mean, is it in the ocean? Is it a busy place with many, many ships and submarines you guys are tracking and all sorts of stuff going on?
Yes,
You can't talk much about that, can you?
we go out, we do training and exercises.
Yeah.
Submarine operations are top secret, can't discuss them.
Now, have you guys ever surfaced like in a tropical area? If so, you guys can swim in the ocean. I've seen pictures of that sometimes.
Yeah, I sent you a picture of us
Yeah.
on the USS San Francisco doing what we call a swim call. When back long time ago when I was in, that would happen occasionally depending on the operational situation. That occurred when we were still being built and going on sea trials where they check out the submarine, make sure that everything works before it gets turned over to the Navy officially and gets commissioned. And we just happened to be down in the Bahamas for a reason. And we were able to come up and surface. Everybody get out there, get some sun. If you wanted to go in the ocean, you could. And you had a guy up on the sail, top of the sail there, with an M16 for sharks. And when we were going through the Panama Canal, that was all surface transiting there. So we had barbecues and all that on top. But
Now on team,
usually that's very, very rare. You don't surface a submarine because when you surface a submarine, it can be found.
wow. On team dynamics, how do you build trust with your crew when you're also dependent on one another?
Well, that's the qualification process
Yeah.
that you have to go through. They give you a year to do it.
Is that
So
perceived?
and then after you do it, you go to a qualifications board and you have to pass that and various other things. And then they give you your submarine dolphins that you can wear if you've never had them before. And you see somebody with submarine dolphins, you can trust that person
All right.
because they earned it. It wasn't
Yeah.
given to them. They went through hell to
Do
get those dolphins.
do you guys
So,
do you guys study like the schematics of the wiring and all that on the
oh
submarine?
yeah, I mean, when you go through your qualifications, it doesn't matter if you're a cook, a nuke, working a nuclear plant. It doesn't matter who you are. If you don't have your submarine dolphins, you have to go through the process, and that process knows every system on board that submarine. How to
Wow.
know every valve, piping, ventilation, how everything worked. So if you happen to be walking and something happened through the ship somewhere, the boat, and something happens, you know how to react and take care of it right away before it gets out of control. It's a whole purpose. It's all damage control. It's to keep the water out of the people tank.
What happens if there's a conflict or tension among one of the crew members? What happens? And then that's like a human, you
Yeah,
know,
I mean it happens, especially on a long deployment towards the end. Somebody say, "Hey, could you pass salt?" F you, I
oh,
mean, it's just you can get on people's nerves. I'm not saying that everybody is uh, always friendly and happy. I mean, there's always some tension somewhere sometimes, but most of the crew steps in and calms down. I mean, it never really escalates to
do you
anything.
work do you work closely with the captain?
Oh, yeah, as a radio man, yeah, the captain. You had to see the captain every time you got message traffic in. Was a person who first saw all the message traffic before it got distributed back in the day. So, and the captain always come in the radio, hey, got any news in sports? Or,
Yeah.
come in and just talk. Yeah, submarine radio men get pretty tight with the captain in a lot of regards.
Have serving on a submarine, has it changed the way you see the world at all?
Yeah,
It has, huh?
yeah, I did. I mean,
Wow.
the whole Navy. Changed me. I grew up. I was born in San Francisco, lived there when I was young, and my grandparents lived there. I used to go live with them. My grandfather, he sang in the San Francisco Opera and all the artsy people. They had their house had boarding and a couple gay guys living there. So I was kind of liberal. Had a different attitude, wasn't very conservative. But when I went in the Navy, um, I turned more conservative. So that changed me.
Yes. Now, is there females and males on submarines?
There is now, but not back in my day.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that's a plus for the Navy or I mean,
Well, I could get in trouble for saying this, but I'm going to say it. Uh, I never worked with a female sailor until I was a senior chief petty officer on shore duty. That was an E8. Uh, Enlisted codes go from E1, ranks E1 to E9. E9 is the Navy's a master chief. E8 is a senior chief, and I was a senior chief. Um, and that's the first time I had to work with female sailors, and it was an eye opener. I used to hear stories. So a lot of them had been on some small ships. At that time, they couldn't be on warships.
Oh,
They were on auxiliary type ships only. But, I'd listen and hear stories, infighting, all sorts of issues going on. And then the Navy decided that, oh, okay, we can put them on all the ships. Well, you can take young women and young men, okay, in their late teens and early 20s,
yes,
and you put them together in a small space for a long time, things are going to happen.
yes.
I mean,
And they
and
do
that
happen,
creates
right?
that creates tension. All right.
Yes.
And can create issues. And I'm saying that happens all the time or with everything. But you know, I personally have a lot of respect for any female in the military because you have to be a certain type and you have to go through a lot, boot camp and a lot of training and everything to be in the military. And I highly respect all the women in the military. I just never thought it was a great idea to throw young people together like that because of things that can happen.
Does the pay
So,
change as, from a captain to say a radio man? The pay changes through different ranks?
yeah, yeah, that's really about the only way you get a pay raise.
Just
Uh,
go up in rank, huh?
yeah, I have to go up in rank. That's the biggest thing, making rank.
Yeah.
So you
How
want
did
to
they
go
how did
as
they pay you? How did they pay you? They put it in your bank automatically back?
well. When I first came in, no. I when the payday came, I had to go get in line. Okay, a big line, and you get up to the table, and there was the dispersing clerk, and they used to pay you in cash.
Wow.
Okay, but then they switched to checks, and I get a check, and then I'd have to rush to get it deposited into the bank.
Yeah.
Then they came up with direct deposit where you had a bank account, you had to have a bank account, checking account, and then it would be automatically put in. But
What
yeah,
years are
when I
we
first
talking?
came in, it was if you didn't see the dispersing clerk, it was too late, and the weekend's coming up, you didn't get paid till Monday.
Now, was there any games on board? Could you play poker and
Oh
stuff?
yeah, yeah, we had board games and card games, and we had initially when I first came in, we had 16 millimeter movies
Wow.
that
What
we
year
would
is
show.
this? What year are we talking here?
We're talking 80, the end of 80, 1980.
Okay.
So didn't really have
No
you didn't
computers.
have video cassettes, you didn't have DVRs, you didn't have any of that. It was film.
Are they allowed to have cell phones on their submarines now? Do you know?
Uh I don't know. When cell phones first came out, we had the captain had one, and we had one in the radio room. The big old brick ones. Where
Yeah,
you
that
but they didn't allow personal cell phones on board, so which made it hard because you'd have three phone lines, okay, or four phone lines coming into the ship, one to the captain's stateroom, one to the ship's office, one to the wardroom, okay, oh, one to the chief's quarters, and one that the crew would use, the whole crew would use up in the control room.
now with
Yeah.
being a radio
So
man,
yeah, if you needed to call somebody, okay, you had one line out of all the other crew members to get on that phone or get a phone call. And, if you were on the phone for too long, I guess it's like in prison. Hey, get off the phone. I got to make a call.
yeah. Now, being a radio man, do you know different? Do you have to know different languages for when you get to different parts?
No, 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 no.
You're just communicating with the U.S., right?
Yeah, we do communications, you know, yeah, it's just U.S. Navy communications.
What's the hardest part about being away from your family and the outside world all those months?
Well, before they put email and all that computer systems on submarines, uh, you get underway, you're cut off from the world. No,
Wow.
no email, no phone calls, no letters, nothing until you get into port. And then hopefully the mail catches up with you, or you can find a place in a foreign port to make a call back home. Go to a big exchange phone bank on a Navy base if you pull into a Navy base, or we use in the submarine force, we use what we call family grams. These are little short messages that you could get occasionally, depending on certain parameters. And those would come in the radio and we'd get them. And they'd have to go to the captain first and decide whether, distribute them or what's going on. So anytime we got family grams in, the crew knew because we had a report over the control room, between the radio and the control room open circuit, that yeah, we got family grams coming in. Yeah, we got them all on board, and there's like 15 of them, or 6 of them, or 5 of them, and so the whole crew sitting there like, oh man, did I get one? I hope I got one,
Yeah.
because that's the only way you heard from anybody.
Is the divorce rate high for submarine personnel?
No more so than the rest of the Navy.
Yeah.
Okay, on average, it wasn't higher in the submarine force than anywhere else. It just average. It occurs, I mean, it's hard. It's hard on the spouse. A submarine wife, okay, is probably one of the hardest jobs, because back in the day, because she, for up to 6 months, sometimes 7 months, she was in charge of the household. She had to pay like my wife had to pay all the bills, handling all the schools, all the issues that came up, and all that. She was everything,
Yeah.
take care of it until I got back.
When you got back, was it easy to fall back into the father role?
No, it's hard to readjust.
Oh, wow.
It's like on a submarine, on a 680 class submarine, the longest distance that you can see straight without anything in the way is about, I'd say, 25 feet. So your depth perception changes.
Wow.
So when you get in a car, I always, hey, my wife come pick me up. I wouldn't drive, because if I drove, I didn't have depth perception. I'd go running into center of an intersection, or half a mile parked back from one. That changes,
Oh,
and then it's reintroducing yourself to your kids and your wife again. It
wow.
really is.
That's hard.
'Cause she's used to being in charge. Now you come back and, hey, I'm the man in the house. I'm in charge. I'll make the decisions and all that. My wife used to, every deployment, every time I come back, the furniture in the whole house was rearranged. She'd rearrange the furniture. Yeah.
What was one of the strangest and funniest traditions your crew has on the sub? What, how'd you guys humor yourself
Oh, we played pranks on each other.
all the
It
time?
helps let off steam. I
Yeah.
mean, in berthing area, the racks that they flip up, and underneath is a pan, okay, underneath the mattress. And that's where you have to put everything for 6 month deployment.
Wow.
So you learn how to pack very
Really
light,
good.
uniforms, civilian clothes, everything, underwear, everything. That's the space you have. Uh, but you have a post to hold the mattress up. So, new guys, non-qualified people, we used to call them non-qualified pukes, because they didn't have their dolphins. And when you're going through qualifications, you can't watch movies. You couldn't read books back then,
Wow.
anything. If you weren't on watch, you better have your qual card out and doing your submarine qualifications. That's it.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. So, non-qual, I remember I was walking through berthing, and I heard, and I looked, and here was a guy. He was posted. He was in his rack, and they had the rack up and the post, and he couldn't get out. He was stuck in there.
Yeah.
Take somebody's shoes, sprinkle them with water, and put them in the freezer, and then before they come back on watch, put their shoes there
Oh, yes.
back, and I mean, just
Just fun
whatever
stuff.
whatever you can think of.
Nothing mean.
No, nothing mean and malicious. I mean, no.
Now, I read someplace that, being a radio man on the nuclear sub, when it comes into ports, you're not allowed to leave the ship because you have all the knowledge of the codes and everything. So is that true?
No, I mean, it's true that submarine radiomen have top secret special compartmental information clearance, SCI.
Hmm.
Okay. Uh, there's only a few people on a submarine that have that. It's officers, uh, submarine radiomen, submarine ETs, submarine sonarmen, and and that's about everybody else has a secret clearance. You
Wow.
couldn't get in the radio without a top secret clearance. You had a There was an access list. Okay, the doors had a combination lock, and you if you didn't have that, you didn't get in the radio, which is nice because that's the only place on board that had a locked door. Nobody could come in. It was all your space, so uh,
Was, was
nobody else did.
technology changing fast like it is today back then in the 80s? Was it
No, it was I had equipment on board that communications equipment that had tubes and transistors and resistors.
yeah.
Then we had some that had logic boards, and then uh, some with PC chips that were coming out and all that. It was, in fact, when I went down the USS Bofin, which is a submarine from World War II that's in Pearl Harbor there. You take tours on. When I took a tour on, I looked in the little space for the radio room. I said, "Oh, I have that equipment. Oh, I have that equipment,
Yeah.
on my submarine." So, you know, patch panels where you had to physically take a cord and patch things, and but over the years, yeah, they slowly, but they
Do you
kept
think
modernized. You have a submarine that's built like this, and then as new systems get installed, updated and things like that, they get installed, and you keep advancing. The new submarines, Virginia class, is like Star Wars to me. Just it's automated computer screens, joysticks instead of. I mean, it's like going on a spaceship,
wow. Yeah, it is
but it's
underground.
so different from my day.
Well, you served in the good times, when it was like all mechanical more or less.
Well, yeah, I joined the right time. I was 23 by the time I joined the Navy. At that time, the Navy treated you like after boot camp, treated you like an adult. All right. Not an, they didn't dictate what you could do in your off hours, where you can go. And, you could, I think I told you a story. I'm on a submarine and we're in port and go, okay, it's lunchtime. I don't want what they're serving on board. I walk over to the Listerman's Club, sit at the bar, get a hamburger and a couple of beers, and
Yeah.
then go back to the submarine. All right, no problem. As long as you weren't drunk, it was no problem. You went on Liberty. You'd pull in a foreign port, and you go on Liberty. You didn't have to tell anybody where you're going, what you're doing. You didn't need a Liberty pass. Okay, you just go. If you didn't have to get back to the ship until your next duty day, which could be 4 days later, you're gone for 4 days. You can go anywhere you want, do anything you want.
Well, when you were
Okay. Now you can't do that. Now it's strictly controlled. You got to have two people, buddy system. You have to tell them where you're going, when you're going,
well, when you
everything.
were on
Nanny state.
leave at some port, did the locals treat you guys with respect? Did they like the Americans? It all depends, right, on what port?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I never pulled in a port that I didn't have a good time and get along with everybody. People are people
They
worldwide.
treat you good then, right?
Yeah, I never felt any well, Japan in a way, you know, Japan to me back then, if you weren't Japanese, Gaijin, you were kind of looked down on.
Does it make the local news when you guys pull in and stay for a
Yes,
while?
yes.
They see the sub out
But
there.
they don't know when we're pulling in. They're not supposed to know when we pull in because it's all classified. All submarine operations are classified top secret.
But when
So
you
you can't talk about it. They don't know when people don't know when you're leaving except your wives and spouses. Okay. They don't know where you're going because you can't tell them where you're going in most cases, unless depending on operation, and you can't tell them when you're going to be back. They don't know. They might know until a couple of days or maybe up to a week before you come back for home port, like in
I,
Pearl, because I was out of sub base of Pearl Harbor for 17 years in Hawaii.
I know, myself, that knowing that the nuclear subs are out there, nobody knows where they are and how many there are. I feel so safe knowing that they're out there protecting
Well,
us.
having do a lot of exercises, like in Pacific, they do rim pack, all these foreign navies get together and do all
Yeah.
these exercises working together. And then we have other exercises where, surface ships want to practice anti-submarine warfare. So a submarine gets assigned to them
Wow.
to be their target and all
Always
that.
training.
Yeah, always training and field day, cleaning the sub. But you, submarines, I always told my surface Navy friends and that if you knew what we could do on a submarine to you guys, you would never go to sea on a surface ship. you
Yeah.
know, you're
Yeah.
not the only way you find it, even with the best anti-submarine warfare in the world. Okay, if you don't want to be found, they're not going to find you. The days of being in close like World War II and getting close and well, they had a surface all the time. Those submarines, they only dove when they were going to do attack, and sometimes they didn't. And those days where they got on the scope and they're calculating everything and then shoot the torpedo. Well, we don't say fire, like fire one part, we say shoot because you don't want to say fire on a submarine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Did you ever have a fire on a submarine? Have you ever witnessed that?
two small ones, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That gets you guys going, huh?
Yeah, well, both of them were put out within seconds because the people who were there knew what to do.
Phew.
You don't want to get a fire on a submarine is worse than flooding. Fire on a submarine. When I was in sub school, one of the things that they showed was a film, and they had this submarine, hole, and the inside had submarines have this legging, and it's painted and everything, and it's highly combustible. Uh, when they lit the fire to where it got to almost 2,000 degrees, was almost 90 seconds.
Wow.
So that's how fast it could get out. So
You
you
guys are
don't.
always training for fires and stuff.
Oh, fires, flooding, emergencies of
Have you
all
ever had
sorts.
any flooding? Any flooding from the outside ever or no?
No, no.
Can
And
you
in
guys?
the submarine force, people go, well, how do I know if that's a leak or flooding? And what we tell guys for qualifying submarines, well, if you see water coming in from something and it doesn't scare you, it's a leak. If
Yeah.
it scares you, it's flooding.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, like after your submarine days and everything, you worked for the government in Virginia, right?
Yeah, I first my wife's from Auburn, Alabama. We lived with her mother there in Auburn. And I'm telling you, I've never lived in a place where the rivalry between Auburn and Alabama, college football, that state, when they play each other, that whole state shuts down.
Wow.
I mean, my wife used to tell me stories. I don't believe it. I interviewed for the job, and the first thing they asked is, are you an Auburn or Alabama fan?
Yeah.
Ooh, well, my wife's from Auburn. She's an Auburn fan, so I guess that makes me kind of like an Auburn fan. Oh, good choice. And all of a sudden,
How'd you meet
but
your wife?
I went offshore. I worked for a company called Oceaneering, and our job was to fly out to the oil rigs, stay out there 2 weeks, and I would work on the electronics and electrical systems for the control van, and we would have a submersible ROV. With the hands manipulate things
Wow.
and do that. And then I got tired. It was like going to sea. So again, then I got a job at International Paper, running the network and PC systems on board. We fixed all the printers and the PCs for the whole everybody working there, the engineers and the paper making machines, PCs, barcode readers. And then I got an offer to work from a friend to work to Naval Space Command
Oh,
uh, up in Dahlgren, Virginia, Northern Virginia.
is that the Space Force today, or is that a different
Yeah,
branch?
it's well, the Naval Space Command. I was there working there doing satellite communications for 4 years, and then they decided to disestablish the Navy Space Command.
Okay.
Okay. And so we got transferred down to Virginia Beach, well, uh, area, Norfolk area here in Virginia, and worked at the amphibious base in Little Creek doing satellite communications, commercial satellite communications. And then they decided to convert our jobs to government service. So then I became a government service person doing commercial SATCOM operations for the entire Navy. Uh,
And
Until I retired.
your son works for the Navy too, right?
Yeah, when he graduated, he got a degree in applied mathematics in George Washington University, and then went on to Penn State and got a master's in computer engineering and I forgot what else, something that's compatible with it. And at the command I was at, there just happened to, I was friends with a lot of people, knew a lot of people. Uh, and was able to get him hired in government service as a
Nice.
GS-9. The highest you can go is a GS-15, and I was a GS-12. Uh,
Man.
and he and after that, you have to go on what's called a senior executive service. That's like what Fauci did. These are jobs for admirals and generals, retired admirals, generals, people like that. So a GS-15 is equivalent to a colonel or a Navy captain.
And it's high pay, good pay, right?
Yeah, so I got him in, and he worked his way and up in 10 years up to a GS-15, and he
Wow.
works out of the Pentagon.
Smart kid, huh?
Yeah, very intelligent.
A
Yeah.
chip off the old
And
block.
well, my wife and I laugh about it because I remember when he was in uh, elementary school, he hated math. Oh, it's too hard. And we're trying to show him. My wife and I are both good at math. We're trying to help him out, and he start crying. I can't do this. This is too hard. And then he gets a degree in applied mathematics.
Well,
Yeah, that's funny.
well, I bet you're a
My
proud
daughter went
father.
to James Madison University, graduated from there, uh, and she went to work for the Daughters of the American Revolution headquarters up in D.C.
Wow.
Okay, doing events, for raising money and travel around and all that. And then she moved over to what's called the Human Rights Campaign, HRC, big LGBTQ, plus place, and she does the same thing, just for a lot more pay. But both of them live up in the DC area.
Well, I bet I'm so thankful that your kids are turned out so good because so many kids don't turn out good.
Yeah, well, there. I'm really sympathetic to people with student debt because you know, my
Yeah.
my daughter, talking to her, my son was able. He made enough money. He got married, and she made a lot of money, and so they were able to pay off their student loans, which total was almost $200,000, something like that, between them. And my daughter, she's been paying on it since she graduated, like 20 years now, little more, little less. And she said, Dad, it's going to probably take me another 20 years to pay it off.
Yeah, that's a big problem nowadays.
Yeah, that's a big problem. So
Well,
you have to be, when you go to college, you have to keep that student debt in mind, because you're going to be paying on it for a long time, and that's going to affect you from being able to buy a house, a car, unless you get a degree in something that's science, engineering, something like that. You get a degree in liberal arts.
well,
You know,
to make this a full circle now, it's sort of ironic that the USS San Francisco submarine is part of a training exercise they use in uh, Virginia Beach, or where is that?
Portsmouth Naval Shipyard here.
What they took the deck off? I mean, what they do to the USS?
Well, all my submarines are decommissioned now. They're all gone, turned into scrap, except for the USS San Francisco. In
Wow.
fact, when the USS San Francisco ran into that undersea mountain, they took the front end off my submarine, the USS Honolulu, and put it on the San Francisco, and then
Wow.
decommissioned Honolulu. But yeah, the USS San Francisco is still alive. It's sitting. It's cut up and it's used for nuclear reactor training for nukes.
Wow. That's interesting.
Okay, but they still have the cruise mess and all that. And I ran into this guy here locally. He at the hardware store, and he's wearing a USS San Francisco hat. And I
Wow.
go, "Oh, were you on the USS San Francisco?" He said, "Well, no." And he told me, he's a nuclear, he's a chief, and he's going through this nuclear training system and everything there on the San Francisco. And I go, "Really?" And he told me all about it. And so he goes, "So, they have pictures of the commissioning crew in the mess decks." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I was on the commissioning crew." Okay. Plank owner is what we call it. So people who are on board a ship before it gets commissioned are called plank owners. They own part of that ship.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Okay, spiritually. Sometimes they give you a piece after they commission. You can get a piece of the ship or something,
Okay.
a little chunk of metal, whatever. But the yeah. So we were talking. He goes, "So you're a radioman?" "Yeah." And I told him my name. He goes, "Oh, I've seen your picture."
Oh, that's yeah. See,
He says, there's the picture of the radio room, and you're sitting right in the middle of that picture. That's you." And I go, "Yeah, that's me." I thought it was funny.
that is funny. What a small world, huh?
Yeah. Who would think I'd run into somebody who's on the USS San Francisco or San Francisco?
Well,
Uh,
just a little side note here is that, I want to let the listeners know that you and me have been friends since how old?
Fourth grade.
Yes, long time.
Fourth grade,
And
man.
I'm
My
70 now.
oldest Dare's friend.
Yeah.
We did a lot of things together, Mike, growing up. Okay, and we both love motorcycles.
Yes.
Never lost it. As you can see, I don't know if you can see it. Can you read that?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Van
Van
Dolsen Vintage
Dolsen.
Motorcycles.
Yeah. So I have motorcycles I work on and retired in my spare time and restore them. I got well, I just finished a 1976 Honda Goldwing and sold it. Guys come and pick it up this weekend.
Nice.
I have a 1970 Triumph Bonneville, which is my personal bike that I ride, and I'm working on a 1974 Harley Davidson FXE Super Glide right
Well,
now.
this is a great interview we had, and I want to just maybe someday have you back on, and we'll go ahead and have a part two to this.
Yeah, I'm sorry I can't really talk about submarine operation.
No, you're doing I mean, you took an oath.
I can talk about life on board.
It was great. We had a great conversation.
But yeah, it was good. So thank you, Mike.
All right.
Love you, brother.
I love you too, Merle. Man.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.